Have you ever wondered what really holds the world's economy together? For the last 50 years, one of the biggest pillars has been something called the petrodollar. It's a system that has quietly shaped everything, from the price of your gas to the power of the US dollar. But what if I told you that system is now facing its biggest challenge in history? Just recently, Saudi Arabia made a move that has the financial world buzzing. On June 9th, 2024, a 50-year-old agreement between the United States and Saudi Arabia quietly expired. This wasn't just any old piece of paper. It was the bedrock of the petrodollar system. The deal, signed back in 1974, basically said that Saudi Arabia would sell its oil exclusively in US dollars. In return, the US provided military support and security. This arrangement was a game changer. Since Saudi Arabia was the world's largest oil exporter, other oil-producing nations followed suit. Soon, a global standard was set. If you wanted to buy oil, you needed US dollars. But now, that 50-year-old agreement is no more, and Saudi Arabia is not renewing it. The United States is no longer Saudi Arabia's biggest customer for oil. China is in 2023. China bought more than a quarter of Saudi's oil exports. So, it makes economic sense for Saudi Arabia to start accepting payments in the Chinese yuan. This is a classic case of following the money. Furthermore, global politics are shifting. We're moving from a unipolar world, dominated by the US, to a multipolar world, with rising powers like China, Russia, India, and Brazil. These countries, often grouped as the BRICS nations, have been vocal about their desire to de-dollarize, to reduce their dependence on the US dollar. Saudi Arabia joining the BRICS bloc in January 2024 was a huge signal of this changing allegiance. This isn't a sudden event. The writing has been on the wall for years. Strained relations between the US and Saudi Arabia, particularly over issues like the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi and the war in Yemen, have weakened the old alliance. The US decision to use the dollar as a weapon, by imposing heavy sanctions on countries like Russia and Iran, has also spooked many nations. They've seen how quickly they can be cut off from the global financial system and are now looking for alternatives to protect themselves. This has accelerated the push for de-dollarization. So, is the petrodollar officially dead? Not overnight. The US dollar is still the world's primary reserve currency, making up nearly 60% of global reserves. Most global debt is denominated in dollars, and the US financial markets are the deepest and most liquid in the world. Dismantling this system will be a slow and complex process. Think of it less like a sudden collapse and more like a slow, steady leak. But the expiration of this 50-year pact is a major crack in the foundation. It's the most significant step yet in the move away from a dollar-centric world. What are the potential consequences for you and me? First, if global demand for the dollar decreases, its value could fall. This would mean that imported goods, from electronics to clothes to food, would become more expensive for Americans. The dollar is incredibly entrenched. But this move by Saudi Arabia is a historic inflection point. It's a clear signal that the financial world order that has defined the last half-century is changing. The process of de-dollarization is no longer just a theory discussed by economists. It's happening in real time. For decades, the world has played a game where the US dollar was the only currency that mattered. Now, Saudi Arabia has just announced that it's willing to play with other currencies too, and that changes everything. This story is still unfolding, and the full impact won't be clear for years. But one thing is certain: the era of the petrodollar's absolute dominance is over. We are entering a new, uncertain, and potentially volatile chapter in global finance. It's a tectonic shift that will reshape power, trade, and the global economy for decades to come.